Share screen. Resume share. Resume share.
Very good evening, viewers. This is Pankaj Arora from team GSTN, and I welcome you all to this webinar on new functionalities. We are bringing about volume 3 of the new functionalities which have been deployed on GST portal recently. So in this series, this is volume 3, and earlier this was broadcast in the Hindi language, and shortly we will broadcast in Tamil and Marathi language also. So this is Pankaj Arora. I welcome you again to this webinar. And this webinar is organized by Goods and Services Network in collaboration with NEGT, that is National E-Governance Division, Digital India. So to begin with, the agenda for today's webinar is, first we will discuss how a taxpayer can apply for revocation of cancellation of its registration if its registration has been cancelled by the officers on their own motion. Then how it can be applied by the taxpayer or GST portal. And then we will discuss how a taxpayer can track the transmission status of its export invoices on which it has paid the IGST. It has exported the goods and IGST has been paid. Now, by using this functionality, the exporters can track the transmission status of their export invoices data with IceGate. And in another feature of today's webinar is export ledger facility has been provided at GST portal. We will discuss its feature, and some miscellaneous changes have been and in form of updates have been done recently. We will describe it in our webinar today. So to begin with, we will start with how a taxpayer can file application for revocation of cancellation of registration. In this case, Rule 23 of CGST rules prescribes for such application where a registration has been cancelled of a taxpayer, and it can be revoked or by the proper officer on application of such taxpayer. So this application is to be filed by the taxpayer, but the condition is the registration should have been cancelled by the tax official, not on the request of the taxpayer, but by initiating proceeding suo motu by the tax official itself. That is, the registration should have been cancelled by the tax official, initiating the proceeding on their own and not at the request of the taxpayer. And the time limit for filing this application is 30 days. The 30 days will be counted from the date of service of cancellation order at GST portal. And for this, a form in REG 21 is available at the dashboard of the taxpayer. So coming again to the Rule 23 prescribes, amongst other things, it prescribes that where the registration has been cancelled as the taxpayer has failed to furnish the returns. For normal taxpayer, if it has not furnished the returns for 6 consecutive tax periods, and for a composition dealer, if such composition dealer has failed to furnish return, that is GSTR 4, for 3 consecutive tax periods. In that case, if it has been cancelled by the tax officials, the application for revocation cancellation can only be applied, can only be filed by such taxpayer only after filing such returns, for which the revocation, the cancellation was done by the taxpayer. So only after filing such returns and paying due tax along with the interest and penalty and late fee applicable. Only after that the taxpayer can apply. But for all these proceedings, the taxpayer has 30 days time period for applying for revocation of cancellation of registration. So the navigation flow is like that the taxpayer has to access the GST portal homepage, that is www.gst.gov.in, and then he has to use his credentials, that is username and password allotted to him for accessing the GST portal. And then he has to click the services menu and then sub menu registration, and then he can open the menu for application for revocation of cancelled registration. So you are viewing the screenshot giving the profile of such taxpayer. If registration has been cancelled either on the request of the taxpayer or by the officials on their own, then in the profile, such taxpayer status will be shown as cancelled and not active. So here you can see that in profile, the status is shown as cancelled. So this when at the time of application, the taxpayer can access this application in the menu after login into GST portal. He has to select the user services and then registration, and then the application for revocation of cancelled registration is there. It will appear there in case of cancelled registrations only. Then after clicking on it, the form opens, which is in form REG 21. So the forms for revocation of cancellation of registration opens up. In this form, the details, like the basic details like the GST number, legal name, trade name, and the address of principal place of business, and the cancellation order by which the registration was cancelled shall be auto-populated. So there's nothing to fill by the taxpayer in these forms. And what he has to do, he has to assign reason. He has to fill in the reason for revocation of cancellation. So what are the reasons which he deems fit for revocation of cancellation of registration? So he has to enter the reason for in the respective field. And then if any documents are to be attached or any sheets are to be attached, any supporting document, then he has to attach those documents by choosing file button. And then the normal procedure is to be followed by him, like he has to verify verification checkbox, and he has to select the name of authorized signatory, and place field he has to enter the place, and then he can save or submit with DSC or EVC as applicable. So I will elaborate in this in coming slides. So you can see that in this slide, all the details are auto-populated of the taxpayer, like his GST number, trade name, and his legal name, and address of principal place of business, cancellation order details by which the cancellation registration was cancelled by the officers are auto-populated. Now he has to enter the particulars of last return files, because non-furnishing of returns for consecutive 6 months by the normal taxpayer and for consecutive 3 tax period by the composition dealers, the registration can be cancelled. And in such case, the taxpayer has to furnish the particulars of the last returns filed, and that is within the 30 days time period, as I elaborated earlier. So he has to provide the particulars of last return files, and he has to enter in the relevant field the reasons for revocation of cancellation by typing on text, all the reasons he has. The text box is provided, and below it there is field for any supporting document. He has to attach any supporting document in his claim, in support of his claim, so that his registration application for revocation of cancellation can be considered by the proper officer. So after successfully filing, a success message appears on his screen that thank you for submission. And after validation of and verification by the system, the ARN will be generated. It may take acknowledgement may take 15 to 20 minutes for generation, because certain validations are done by the system. So after successful filing of application by the taxpayer, it has to be processed and approved by the proper officer. So Rule 22, Sub Rule 2 of CGST rules provides that on receipt of the application, if officer found that there are sufficient grounds for revocation of cancellation of registration, then he will revoke the cancellation and the registration certificate will be restored. And for that effect, a order shall be issued by the officer in form REG 22. But officer also has 30 days time limit for processing and disposing of such application. So the application can be disposed only on by two way. First is if there are sufficient grounds for revocation of cancellation order, then the order will be issued within 30 days. Straight away approval will be given. If there are the grounds given by the taxpayer are not sufficient so as to call for revocation of cancellation registration, in that case, the officer cannot straight away reject the application. First, he has to issue a show cause notice proposing rejection of such application to the taxpayer. So, if the grounds given by the taxpayer needs further elaboration or some clarification, the taxpayer, the tax official will issue a show cause notice and he can ask for any clarification which is warranted in the matter. And upon receipt of such notice, the taxpayer is under obligation to reply it in within 7 days. And if the officer has in the notice has earmarked any date on time for the personal hearing, then the taxpayer is under obligation to attend that personal hearing and produce its documents and submit clarification if required. So the taxpayer can also track the status of application at GST portal if on the basis of ARN, that is application reference number, that is acknowledgement generated at the GST portal after successful filing of such application. So in this slide, we will discuss how and when an application can be rejected by the proper officer. So if the proper officer, when disposing this application, find that the grounds given are not sufficient, or if any further clarification on documents is required, then the official has 30 days time to for such disposal, and he can issue notice proposing rejection to such taxpayer. And the taxpayer, as I mentioned earlier, the taxpayer has only 7 days time limit to comply with such notice. So this is the representative screenshot of the officer's dashboard. You can see that on his pending task dashboard, he can view the revocation of cancelled registration, all such items on his dashboard, and upon clicking it can get the detailed, and upon clicking on the ARN number, concerned ARN number, the application filed by such taxpayer opens up. So suppose the officer is disposing this application, he can view, and on the basic details, he can choose the field in which the clarification is required, or the documents are additional documents or information is required. Then he can choose the field and he can type the query and add as many query as he deemed fit. So after entering the text box of query, he can generate the show cause notice proposing rejection of such application filed by the taxpayer. So in this you can see that the officer is opting to generate SCN asking for certain clarification or additional documents in this matter. So when he clicks on the officer clicks on generate SCN, an order auto-populates on the GST portal at the screen of the official, and he can enter if the personal hearing is required or only written reply is required. If personal hearing is the taxpayer is to appear for personal hearing, he can select the date from the menu, date and time, and click on generate SCN order. And when a notice is issued to the taxpayer can get its intimation on its notified email ID and mobile number. In like this is the representative screen of such intimation of notice for seeking clarification on application of revocation of cancellation. And you can see that it has the ARN number indicated the ARN number also, and the notice reference number is also given in this email which is received by the taxpayer on its notified email ID. So a personal hearing date and time are also mentioned in this mail. So the taxpayer can, while filing clarification, can search this reference number notice by giving, which has been given on notice reference number, which has been given in the mail. On the basis of this reference number, he can search for the notice, and also on the basis of ARN, he can search for the notice on the functionality available on his dashboard. This is the taxpayer's dashboard. And coming on next screen, you can see that when the application is accessed, such application notice is accessed by the taxpayer, there are certain relevant fields, like against each query raised by the tax official, a column for query response is given, in which the taxpayer has to enter his response against each of the query. This is the representative screen of query, and query description and query response. And if any additional information is required to be furnished by the taxpayer in response to such show cause notice, then he can provide it in the relevant text box available here. And if any supporting documents are required to in support of its claim, then such supporting document can also be attached in such response. So the remaining thing is as usual. After clicking on the verification, select the authorized signatory, mark the place, and then submit through DSC or EVC, whichever is applicable in your case. And you can also save the application before actual filing it, so that to ensure whether all the information given by you is complete and correct or not. So after successfully, when you successfully submit your application for registration with ARN, you have submitted response to show cause notice. A success message again appears at the dashboard of taxpayer on its note, and also on his notified email ID and mobile number. So this is the representative screen of the email which the taxpayer gets on his dashboard. This is regarding reply to the notice for rejection of application. In this also, the application reference number is mentioned and the notice reference number is also mentioned. And the taxpayer can also view and download all its submission, which is by using the functionality at his dashboard. So for viewing this, he has to click on user services and then view my submissions. Click on view my submissions, and then he can view and download his submission provided earlier. There are two fields. He can select either through form number, like in this screen, you can see he can select the GST REG 24, that is reply to the notice for rejection of application in this case. And likewise, he has to select from submission. If he doesn't have the ARN number or the form number, in that case, he can select the period to search all the submissions filed during the selected period. So this is, again, we come to the representative screen of the processing of application by the tax official, by the proper officer. The status will be shown as pending for orders. So while the tax officer is viewing the application along with the response of the query, now if the response is not sufficient, the grounds mentioned are not sufficient, so as to issue for order for revocation of cancellation. So in that case, the application, since a notice has already been issued and has been replied by the tax officer, and if the grounds are not by the taxpayer, and if the proper officer finds that the grounds are not sufficient, he can now reject the application if the merits of case are like this. Then for this, he has a button like for rejecting, and the order will be issued in GST REG 5. And in this, the officer shall state the reasons and click the relevant reasons for which the he is rejecting the application for revocation of cancellation of registration. So upon if the such application is rejected, accordingly mail will be sent from GST portal at the notified email ID of such taxpayer and his mobile number, and this will also have the reference of the rejection order and the ARN number. So and which the taxpayer can view and download, as I elaborated in the previous slides. So this is the specimen rejection order. But in case the officer at the time of processing, he finds that there is sufficient reason to restore the registration and revoke the cancellation of registration on the basis of application filed by the taxpayer. In that case, the officer can approve the application by clicking on approve button, and then accordingly an order for restoration of registration and revocation of cancellation of registration shall be issued by such officer in form REG 22, and there is approve button on the dashboard of screen, as you can see on my screen. So once an application is approved, the message comes ARN is approved, and registration certificate will be generated and sent to the taxpayer. And in such case, upon approval of such application, the status will be changed from inactive or cancelled to active, and such taxpayer whose application for revocation of cancellation of registration has been duly approved by the tax official, he can again log in at GST portal and using the same username and password, and discharge all his compliance functions accordingly. So this was all we had for this functionality, that is application for revocation of cancellation of registration. So our next functionality which we will discuss in this, that is how a taxpayer can track the transmission status of export invoices data with IceGate portal. So as you all know that in case a taxpayer has exported the goods on payment of tax, that is IGST and cess, whichever is applicable, it can be all such exports are zero rate supply, and the taxpayer can get the refund of the IGST and cess paid on such export of goods from the customs authorities. So in this case, the shipping bill is deemed to be the application for refund of such tax, and there is no requirement of filing any separate refund application. And in such case, where the goods are exported on payment of tax, the refund is given sanctioned by the customs authorities in such case. But before that sanction, there are certain validations inbuilt at GST portal as well as customs portal, that is IceGate portal. So first thing is this, on the basis of the export data mentioned by the taxpayer in GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B and the tax paid on the such exports in GSTR 3B, validations are done by the GST portal. And upon successful validation by GST portal, only upon such successful validation, the data export invoice data is transmitted to customs portal, that is IceGate portal. So to facilitate quick tracking, a functionality has been provided at GST portal by which the such exporters taxpayer can track whether their export invoice level data has been successfully transmitted from the GST portal to IceGate portal, that is customs portal, whether it has been transmitted or not, what is the status, or in case it has been partially transmitted, it can also be tracked by such taxpayers. So for such tracking, the taxpayer has to log into GST portal, and then he has to navigate to services and then select refund. And then there is sub menu, track status of invoice data to be shared with IceGate services from the GST portal. So here it is to mention that such tracking can be done on monthly basis by the taxpayer, because in the relevant field he has to provide the financial year and month in such search field. And for those taxpayers who are filing GSTR1 quarterly, they will select the last month of such quarter. They will select the last month of the respective quarter for which status is to be checked, and the result shall display the result for whole quarter in their case. So before going further, I would like to reiterate that in GSTR1, in table 6A, you will have to enter the export invoices details in case of export have been made by you on payment of tax. So in table 6A, you will have to enter it all such export data properly. And if there are certain reasons due to which some information which was filed incorrectly or incompletely in such table, in subsequent period, you can amend the same by using functionality given at table 9A. Table 9A, you can amend the such details which have been provided earlier by you. So this is for GSTR1 filed by you. And in GSTR3B, GSTR3B should have both GSTR1 and 3B must have been filed by you. Valid returns should have been filed for such period by the taxpayer. And also for filing of such GST at the time of filing of GSTR3B, you will have to ensure that all such export details, the tax paid on such exports, because it falls under zero rate supply, it should be indicated in table 3.1b of GSTR3B of relevant tax period filed by you. So these two are major points while claiming refund of IGST and cess paid on the export of goods. So we come to navigation flow. The taxpayer, after logging with his valid credentials, he will navigate to services and then refunds. He will select refunds, and there is submenu track status of invoice data to be shared with IceGate. So like you are viewing in my screen that this is, you will have to select financial year and month. As I mentioned earlier, that if a taxpayer is filing quarterly return, in this month column, he has to select the last month of such quarter, and the results will be shown for the whole quarter in his case. Now, the results shown are like this. Data of valid export invoices provided in the return period has been transmitted or partially transmitted to GST system by the GST system to IceGate for further processing. So here you can see that it gives the total count-wise information and total IGST-wise information along with cess amount. So suppose in that selected tax period in table 6A, that is in table 6A of GSTR1, total invoice detail were given as 8. So, and the IGST amount and cess amount was given. Out of these 8 documents, in this representative screen, you can see that the 4 number of documents are transmitted to IceGate by GST portal after successful validations. So the upon processing by GST portal, all these 4 documents in which whatever amount of IGST and cess on export of goods shall be provided shall be sanctioned by the customs authorities to such taxpayer. And you can see in the third column that certain invoices have not been transmitted. So in this screen, the reasons are shown as shipping bill or port code details are either missing or port code is incorrect. So you can see that against the count, there is hyperlink provided to it. And against such failed invoices which could not be transmitted by GST portal to IceGate, there is some one IGST and cess amount is also indicated. When you click on the hyperlink, you can download details of such failed invoices. And if there is any case by which the invoice data was successfully transmitted, but it was subsequently rejected by the IceGate, in that case also, while using this functionality, you can get such details and take necessary action. So coming to action, suppose you find that you click on the failed invoices count, and you see that the shipping bill is missing or given incorrect, or port details are required to be mentioned. In that case, if you have mentioned it earlier in table 6A of GSTR1, you can amend it suitably by using table 9A in the subsequent tax period at the time of filing GSTR1 for that subsequent tax period. So coming further, like you can click on the error count and you can download such record also. So while clicking on download such record, you can all these failed invoices details are can be downloaded, and accordingly action can be taken on that. So here one thing is pertinent to mention that after you amend such details in the subsequent return, the validation will be done on a cumulative basis. And after passing if you have accordingly amended the GSTR1 and paid the differential tax if it is applicable along with interest, it will be viewed on it will be validated on cumulative basis by GST portal, and upon passing such validation, the invoice details shall be successfully transmitted to IceGate portal. So here I have prepared a chart according to what status, what is the recommended action. So if refund data could not be transmitted to IceGate because GSTR1 is not filed for such tax period, in that case, the taxpayer is advised to file GSTR1 for the selected return period. And it is pertinent to mention that table 6A should be containing proper and complete details of such export data, invoice data. And if the invoices data could not be transmitted because the IGST which was actually paid in GSTR 3B under column GST 3.1B was not equal to or more than the tax liability on export of goods indicated in table 6 and table 9 of the GSTR1 filed, then in that case validation again failed. So you will have to take care of this deficiency in next return cycle. If certain records is to be amended in pertaining to GSTR1, if you have omitted mentioning these details in table 6A, you can do it in while entering table 6A of the subsequent period. If certain incorrect information is given by you in table 6A, you can correct it by using it table 9A of GSTR1 of subsequent period. And likewise, if there is any shortage of the tax paid, you can pay it along with interest in the subsequent GSTR 3B. And on aggregate level, the validation will be done on accumulative basis. And then when it will be validated, it will be transmitted to IceGate. Only if the deficiency is cleared in the next return cycle by such taxpayer. So if this is the continuous process, the validation process is continuous, and on aggregate level, when the deficiency is made good by such taxpayer by suitably amending the GSTR1 and the GSTR 3B, in as required. In such case, further validation will be done, and upon passing such validation, the invoice level data will be transmitted to Customs Authority by GST portal. So this is the poll. You can select how you can rate this webinar, and Dhrubajit, you can post this after some time, and if there are certain partial validation failure, you can also click on the relevant invoice error count, and take action accordingly. And suppose you have omitted, the taxpayer has omitted, by omission, he did not mention the export invoices detail in table 6A for the selected period. Now he is required to indicate such details in table 6A of GSTR1 for the subsequent period. And if any tax is to be paid along with interest, it should be paid in GSTR3B of such period. So this was how to track the transmission status of export invoices data, whether it was successfully transmitted, and what was the action required if it was not transmitted successfully by the GST portal to iSCADE. So this was another major functionality which was deployed at GST portal recently. I hope it was useful for you in general, and in particular for those taxpayers who have applied for refund of IGST, who are waiting for it, but they are clueless how to make good the deficiencies in the GSTR1 and GSTR3B filed by them. So there is another functionality recently deployed at GST portal, that is export ledger. So the GST portal uses ledger-based approach to accumulate the IGST and cess from export and SEZ invoices. So the details given by you in table 6A, table 6B, and table 9A of subsequent GSTR1. So all these details shall be accumulated in the ledger, and it will be compared with the IGST and cess paid under 3.1B. I will mention that under 3.1B, details of all zero-rated supplies, which includes the exports also. All zero-rated supply details are to be indicated in table 3.1B of GSTR3B. So on aggregate level basis, all entries are maintained in the electronic export ledger, which is the recent functionality at GST portal. So all the eligible invoices which are transmitted by GST portal to iSCADE, there is one condition, that the GSTR1 and GSTR3B for the relevant period must have been filed, and the liability shown in table 6A and 6B of GSTR1 should be properly discharged in and indicated in table 3.1B, and the tax should have been, IGST and cess should have been paid on it accordingly by the taxpayer. So if there is any difference, you can view your export ledger for the relevant month, and you can see if there is any negative balance. You can see in that case, if there is any negative balance, which means that the tax liabilities to that extent is yet to be discharged by you. In that case, there will be no transmission of export invoices data from the GST portal to customs portal. So first thing is that first you ascertain that difference. What is the IGST and cess total aggregate level difference, which has been mentioned by you in table 3.1B of GSTR3B, and in comparison with the table 6A and 6B of GSTR1, and if any subsequent amendment is done in table 9 of GSTR1. So all you can see in your export ledger. and accordingly you can make good any deficiency which is indicated. So the navigation flow is same. You will have to select after logging in, you will have to navigate to services, refunds, and then track status of invoice data to be shared with IceGate. And then you can see that an hyperlink is a link is to view export ledger is given at the top of such report. So if you want to view the export ledger, you can click on the link provided at the top of such form. And here it is mentioned, it is to mention that you will not select any period, because when you click on the view export ledger link, it will show you the aggregate aggregate of all the return period wise IGST paid and SAS paid in debit and credit form, and there is net balance of IGST and SAS will be shown in the column. We will further discuss it in the coming slide. So to begin with, you will have to click on the link provided for the export ledger, and you will not select any tax period for viewing such export ledger, because it will be all the status will be shown as on date of such clicking. And if there is any, you can see the net balance for IGST and SAS. And if there is any negative balance, that it means that the actual tax has been paid, which has been paid by you, falls short of your liability. So you have to make good such deficiency by paying such IGST and SAS. And you can also download the export ledger in CSV format by clicking on, there is a link for downloading such export ledger. So this is the description of export ledger. Net IGST balance means if there is difference between cumulative IGST from table 3.1b of all the GSTR 3b returns filed by you and table 6a, 6b, 9a of all the GSTR 1 filed by you. So if the net balance is negative, it means that you will have to pay such tax. It is your liability. And likewise, in the net SAS balance, if it is negative, you will have to pay the SAS along with interest if applicable. And if it is positive, it means that it is good. There's no action to be taken in such matter. So it will show you, the field will show you the date on which the view was generated and the return period and return type it will show. And suppose it is indicating R1. R1 means GSTR1 and R3B means GSTR return 3B. So credit and debit entries will be given in the export ledger. Credit means the actual tax paid by you in form GSTR 3B, and debit means the actual tax liability which has been declared by you while entering the details in table 6A, 6B and 9A of GSTR1 till date in accumulated in all the returns GSTR1 filed by you. So, and IGST1 amount, it will also show the IGST amount and the SAS amount to you. So this is the representative screen. After clicking on view export ledger, you can see that it is showing the net export, net IGST balance, net SAS balance, and date of generation of view of such export ledger. And upon clicking of download a CSV, you can download such export ledger. And it will show you return period and the return type, that is GSTR 3B and GSTR 1. Credit means the actual tax payment. Debit means the declaration of liability by you in form GSTR 1. So the export ledger will show the aggregate and the month-wise view of IGST and SAS amount only, and not the tax paid on other heads. So this was regarding the how you can view your export ledger and what information you can derive, and accordingly what action a taxpayer can do on the basis of export ledger. And if there is any tax and any tax liability remaining to be paid, it can it can be paid by the such taxpayer. And it will also help the tax official in assessment of your liability. So there is another change in Form GSTR 3B. Earlier, it happens that while you enter the table, the return GSTR 3B, in such table, there was one column that ITC is reversal in table 4B of 2, which indicated as other reversal. So you can see in this slide that against table 4B, ITC reversal is given in table 4B, and 4B1 is regarding reversal as per rule 42 and 43. And if there are any other reversal on other counts, and in that case, such the validation was there that if you select central tax, the earlier validation was there that you cannot indicate the amount which is not equal to the amount given as central tax, and it has to be equal earlier. Now that validation has been removed, which provided for equal tax amounts. So now the taxpayer can enter the different CGST and SGST amount in table 4B 2 column, which if it is required to be entered different amount. Suppose in while entering the trans 1 reversal, if the certain excess amount or wrong amount has been availed, now it can be indicated accordingly, and the validation has been removed in while entering the table, the information in table 4B2, which indicates the reversal on other counts. So it's all we have in today's webinar, that is volume 3 of new functionality as GSTR GST portal. So I hope you find it will be useful for you, and you can rate this webinar. The viewers can rate this webinar. How you rate this webinar, it will help us in planning and organizing the webinars in a more fruitful and useful way. So so we are also on the goods and services network is having various its presence on various social media channels. We are there on Facebook in GST Systems, GST Systems India, in the name of GST Systems India, and we are on Twitter in our Twitter handle is Ask GS Tech, where you can raise your query regarding any technical problems or GST, any process related query relating to GST portal. And we are also on YouTube. On our YouTube channel, you can view all the webinars, all our webinar recordings and short films and see computer-based trainings in our YouTube channel. And for which one thing I would like to mention, that in all these social media, we regularly update various troubleshooting tips and update it regarding the latest on the GST portal. So please like us, subscribe us, and follow us on our YouTube channel if you have not done it so far. So it's all for this webinar. I hope this has been found useful by you, and I must express my sincere thanks to Mr. Prakash Kumar, CEO, Mrs. Kajal Singh, EVP Services, Mr. Rajiv Agarwal, SVP, for the inspiration and support in organizing such webinars, and my colleagues in training team, Mr. Bhagwan Patil, Mr. Russell, Mr. J. Russell, Mr. Satishwaran, Ms. Neera, and Rekha Tatawat, who helped me in every possible way in bringing this content of this webinar to you. And our members of technology team, Mr. Harsh Agarwal and Mr. Nirmal Kumar and Ranjit Sinha. And in IT team, Mr. Munish Sharma for conducting it successfully. and in NEGD, which has National E-Governance Division, which has provided us platform to reach you with our new presentations. Mr. Shielu Rao, GM Capacity Building in NEGD, and Mr. Dhrubajit for organizing it. And you are the real stakeholders, dear viewers. I must thank you all for sparing your valuable time to watch this webinar. Please keep in touch, and we shall be bringing you new presentations in form of new webinars on various topics. Thank you very much. That's all for today. Thank you. Jai Hind.